Hi Hillary. How are you?
Fine, Mr. President. Can we please talk about your speech regarding Israel going back to the 67 borders?
Hillary, I thought you understood that I needed to make the statement on the 67 borders in order to appease the Arab leaders.
But Mr. President, Israel is our closest ally. How can we demand them to return to indefensible borders?
Hillary, Israel will have to return to its 67 borders if it wants peace with the Arabs and Muslim nations.
But Mr. President, how can you tell another nation where its borders should be? It is like Switzerland telling us to change our borders with Mexico or Canada.
No, Hillary, it is not the same. We have to tell Israel where its borders should be so they can have peace with the Muslims and Arabs.
But Mr. President, Israel has already withdrawn from Gaza and southern Lebanon, and all they have gotten in return is rockets. How can we demand them to withdraw from more land?
Hillary, Israel must withdraw from the occupied territories if it wants peace.
But Mr. President, if Israel goes back to the 67 lines, the most narrow part of the country will be only 8 miles wide. These are indefensible borders.
Hillary, I have spoken to the Arab leaders. They have assured me that Israel will be more secure within its 67 borders.
But Mr. President, what about Hamas? They call for Israel's destruction and the killing of the Jewish people. How can Israel make peace with a terrorist organization?
Hillary, if Israel returns to its 67 borders, Hamas will not attack. Mahmoud Abbas has assured me of this.
Mr. President, did you not see the speech Prime Minister Netanyahu gave to Congress? Both Democrats and Republicans gave him standing ovations. No one supports your statement.
Hillary, I have received support from the European Union and Arab nations. They agree with me that Israel must return to its 67 borders.
But Mr. President, the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, has said that while he supports your speech, he believes that the two parties must sit down and negotiate the borders. He is not telling Israel where its borders should be. Why did you?
Hillary, the Arab Spring has started. Israel must return to its 67 borders.
But Mr. President, why don't we pressure the Palestinians to return to the negotiating table? You have now given them another reason not to sit down with the Israelis and talk.
Hillary, I have been assured by my advisors that if I made a public statement that Israel should return to its 67 borders, that the Palestinians would return to the negotiating table.
But Mr. President, the Palestinians are planning to go to the United Nations to put forward a vote on their statehood. How is this coming back to negotiations?
No, Hillary. I have been assured by Mahmoud Abbas that the Palestinians want to negotiate with the Israelis.
Mr. President, if the Palestinians go to the United Nations, and the General Assembly votes in favor of this, it will be referred to the Security Council. Will the United States use its veto?
Hillary, we do not have to use our veto. Mahmoud Abbas has assured me he will return to the negotiating table.
Mr. President, the Palestinians have no intention of negotiating with Israel. If the motion comes to the Security Council, the United States must use its veto.
Hillary, if Israel returns to its 67 borders, the Palestinians will not do this.
Mr. President, your Middle East strategy has failed. You have isolated our close ally Israel from the rest of the world and have brought the peace process to a complete standstill. Mr. President, I am handing in my resignation. I can no longer support your policy towards Israel.